I want to start this session to talk about the common pitfalls when building generative AI. And I've read this article here, which is pretty interesting. And there are a couple of points that I want to go through. And let's start by the first one. Use generative AI when you don't need generative AI. And I know that many AI teams, they want to use AI to automate things. And they want to use AI because they were told to use AI because it makes them much more productive and much more efficient and more creative. And I understand this. However, teams are coming to me and saying that, we have this task here and we need to automate it. And we thought that AI would be a great fit here. So one example I have, and I read this here, that one team wanted to compare structured Excel data across several sheets in Excel. And that, of course, makes no sense. Because if you have structured data in Excel, you can just join those columns across several sheets. And then, for example, in this use case, count something that you want to count, basically. And this makes no sense. On the other side, a good use case for generative AI, for example, would be extracting unstructured data. If you have a column, for example, in your Excel data, where you have text, user feedback, for example, that you would like to structure a bit more. That's a great use case. Number 2 is confuse bad product with bad AI. And I must say that is so true. I'm very into coding assistants. I started with GitHub Copilot and then came Cursor, Claude Code. I was into Kiro, and it is super fun. They make you more productive. But there are a lot of skeptical people as well. And they are saying like, AI doesn't do a good job here. And I can code a lot faster. And that might be true, but they cannot do the job or two jobs at the same time. An AI can. However, I get the question then. They want to use GitHub Copilot, which is doing a bad job. And then they are asking me like, or telling me, why should I use Cursor? I mean, Cursor, for example, or Claude Code, they are all using the same models. So I don't see a point in using a better AI coding assistant because it does the same job. And that's not true. Because the coding assistants have value. I can create my own coding assistants pretty easily. It takes about, 10 minutes to create my very own coding assistants because it's just read files, list files, and edit files. If you have those 3 tools in place with function calling, you can build your own coding assistants. And then you could say, I don't need Cursor. I don't need Claude Code. I have my own one and it uses the exact same model. So it must be the same. But of course you already see that's garbage. There is quality in the AI coding assistants. Why should those companies be funded with millions of dollars? Makes no sense, right? Because the way they're using the tools and how they prompt those tools, how they create, together with the user, the context that is then fit into the LLM. That's the value that is created with those AI coding assistants. It's not the model alone. The model alone, of course, does a great job, an important job. But it's much more. Let's move on. Starting too complex. So many developers start with overly complicated architecture and tools instead of simple and direct solutions. So I understand that it is very fun and very interesting to read about new frameworks. LangChain, for example, or Vercel, or many other frameworks and SDKs. They promise you to fix all those AI problems, model agnostic, and you have an AI database and model routing, and you just put in your tools, and then magically it picks the right tools based on a user prompt, and so on. The reality is that we are all new to this. We are all new to AI, and we need to understand what's actually going on there. Very often it's very simple to do those things yourself. And let me think of a very simple example is talking to an AI, for example, to an LLM. You could figure out and learn how you use, as an example, LangChain or Vercel to send a user prompt to an LLM. And you read their documentation with AI, of course. And you're happy, right? But you might not understand what's behind there. You might not understand that there's really nothing behind and that it's just a request to an endpoint, nothing more. But if you understand this, and this is just an example, that there's nothing more, you understand that, well, maybe, at some point, of course, I have to have content filtering, I have to have content safety, I have to have caching, and maybe Vercel or LangChain or whatever SDK or framework you're using is all of this doing for you, but you don't know why and what's happening if you haven't done it yourself, right? That's why it's very important, I guess, to start easy, simple, and not too complex. Understand the concepts first before you dive into this straight ahead. Understand the concepts and then understand the value of the SDK or framework that you want to use. Over-index on early success. So early prototypes can create a false sense of confidence that production will be easy. And very often it's not. One example from my own doing and creating tools, AI tools. So ChatGPT came out and I already knew how I would talk to an AI model, how to talk to an LLM, and how you create conversations and so on, because I have done this already in Slack. So I was thinking, wow, this is so easy. I can do this myself. I can just go sit down, use Claude Code, and create my own ChatGPT clone. It is very simple. And I did this. And we were using it inside our company because at that point, ChatGPT was for enterprises quite expensive. And we didn't want to spend that much money if we can't do this ourselves. With AI coding tools, everything can be produced pretty fast. And we did this. However, one thing that we realized is that the quality was not on par with ChatGPT. Requests would time out. There would be errors sometimes, and tokens, or we used too much tokens maybe, and we had to have to implement many guardrails basically. So with this knowing, we know that when we build new AI tools, like we are doing right now, an AI shopping assistant, it is not easy. It is pretty hard not to create the features. Creating features is very simple, but to create quality. Quality is hard. You need to make sure that in the shopping, you have actually good products. How do you get the products? how you get the data for the products. How do you pay actually when you get as a user a product presented? Maybe you don't. But how are products recommended? On what base? How do you interact with the user in a feedback loop? If you want to have a television 55-inch and from a user perspective, that's the only information that you give it, as an LLM or AI solution, you need to ask back. What questions are you actually asking back for this television, right? And what about other categories? Do you want to give general questions and finding it out dynamically? This can be very random and error prone to hallucination. Or do you want to have defined categories and defined attributes that the user needs to mention, or helping the user, guide the user? This is the quality of it. Evals, you need to work with evals, really automated testing. And this leads me to my next point. Testing this whole. Relying on AI-based evaluations, meaning LLM as a judge, can lead to misleading performance metrics. And human evaluation is essential still. Automated testing cannot fix everything for you, because user conversations with your AI solutions, they have infinite numbers of possibilities how those conversations can go. And automated testing cannot always provide you enough insights, even though it can help you to test changes in your backend application, AI solution. But you still need a human in the loop, a human that looks at how your test cases are evolving, how your conversations are changing, and so on. You need to be there as well at all times. Then the next thing, crowdsourcing use cases without any strategy. So companies that crowdsource AI use cases from employees, they often end up with many low-value experiments and no cohesive direction. And I would argue that this is very, very true. As an example, I created this ChatGPT clone, which saved us money because we didn't have to give it to OpenAI, which is nice. I also created another tool, which is Whisper. It's a transcription tool. I can speak into this laptop here. I have online meetings or physical meetings. The microphone is on. It works with the headset, of course, as well. And it would create a polished transcription with follow-up points, with main points. It gives a summary. And on the fly, it also generates questions, critical questions that you can ask during a meeting. This sounds very, very exciting. Also, the tool, the ChatGPT clone, sounds very exciting and useful for many people in the organization. But where I work, we are working for 13 million people, not for 600. So this use case, or both those use cases, are nice. They're nice internal tools. But do we want to spend our time with those tools? Probably not. They are essential for learning. If it's that what makes you going to create, to learn and research and provide at the end indirectly value to the organization, then fine. But you need to be aware of that. You need to be aware where you put your focus on AI. So let's just summarize this a bit. What are the main pitfalls in building generative AI products? So overusing AI, think about that. Neglecting the UX, that means also the interaction with the users. How are they perceiving your AI product? Do not start too complex, but keep it simple in the beginning. And skipping human evaluation is a big mistake. Humans are very important in this one here. And then, of course, a lack of a strategic focus, which is very important. You need to know what to build with your AI. Why do you want to have AI in the first place, right? AI is just a tool. It's a very, very powerful tool, but you need to know why you're using it and when. Thank you very much.